under separate cover. Including all of that, I move that the agenda be confirmed. Dave, those against, those for, those against, carried. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Siggy's here, but apologies also from Jeff Taylor, who's away at the moment.
Okay, all right, sorry, I hadn't picked that one up.
Sorry, I should have said that.
Okay. We'll add that and James's shirt into the apologies. I'll move that Jeff be taken as an apology. Dave seconds. Those in favour, those against, carried. Thank you. All right, item number 3, declarations of interest. Anyone anything to... Thank you. Public forum, Roger. So, Roger, I think you've got 3 minutes. If that includes question time from councillors, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Councillor Chair Gary. Commenting on, I just wanted to comment on the item number 6, the Chair's report concerning the cost-benefit analysis which has been suggested. I understand that it's been discussed with the Mayor and the Chief Executive. I'm just a little bit concerned that I feel that there's a public perception that there may be some extraneous staff influence on councillors' voting behaviour. I picked that up just speaking to members of the public over the past couple of years or so, and I just feel that the councillors, it's crucial the councillors are seen to be reaching their decisions completely independently of staff influence, and I appreciate that that's actually the case, but it's perceptions that count. It's also important that I feel that although the benefits of a cost-benefit analysis have been outlined quite well, I just think that councillors here have their own unique reasoning processes, how they come to these decisions. It's always really interesting to see how individual councillors arrive at their decisions. And as for I don't believe that, I believe the captives of a council monopoly is too strong a term, and I think that the 3-yearly election cycle brings sufficient countervailing power to bring on councillors so that will bring them under check, so that overspending, spending on the wrong projects is at least, there's one check on that. So I think that the report, Mr. Chair, is excellent, and I'll leave it there. Do I have any questions?
Thank you for saying the report was excellent. I agree with you. Beg your pardon? So is it your contention, Roger, I'm just trying to flesh out what you're saying, that the democratic process itself is almost enough of a, handbrake's not the right word, but enough of a control over council that cost-benefit analysis is unnecessary? I mean, you're saying that if the people don't like the way we're spending money, they can throw us out in 3 years' time.
It goes,
or 6 months' time.
Sorry, yes. It goes a long way toward that, and I believe that more needs to be done. I believe that rules of the democratic process need to be changed. I've had a good look at the Local Government Amendment Act, Community Wellbeing this year, and that's actually stalled in Parliament, and looks as though it's going to be shelved, but I think that's a real pity because they had some quite good ideas on the treatment of development contributions, for example.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Roger. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thanks, Roger, for your input. Okay. The next item is confirmation of the open minutes, which is item 6 on page 14. Page numbers are a bit wrong, aren't they? Just one point, I think I'm accurate, on page 9 of our agendas, under paragraph 9, funding options, growth infrastructure funding gap, go down to the resolution. C, notes that staff will bring the recommendation to council meeting on the 21st of February, which is obviously today. My understanding is from talking to David that that has been moved to the council meeting on the 26th of February, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So at the time of the meeting, those dates were correct, but then to give more time for the annual plan, we flipped the Finance Committee date with the council date.
Thank you for that clarity. Any further discussion on the minutes? I'll move they be received. Mallet, Casson, those in favour, those against, carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6, the Chair's report. We've heard Roger's assessment of it. Okay, I'll take the report as read. And just highlight a couple of key points. I don't think that the democratic process is enough protection for people in terms of us spending their money. So and that wasn't actually an angle I'd thought of when I wrote this report, so thanks for that, Roger. And I'm told, having brought this up with Richard and David, that there is some degree of cost-benefit analysis that goes on before our decisions are made and before recommendations are brought to us. But I don't think we see anywhere enough visibility of the factors that have been weighed, the costs and the benefits. And so I'd like to see us start to bring a bit more rigour into our decision-making by using the tool of cost-benefit analysis. And and there may be tons and tons of it going on in the background, in the machine behind us that I don't see. So that's the reason for calling for a staff briefing on what is brought to council from cost-benefit analysis and what is not. Any discussion? Thanks, Paula.
Oops. Sorry about
First,
that.
what do you think of the report? You up there with Roger?
Yeah, look, I'd just like to comment on the cost-benefit analysis part of it, if I could. I absolutely agree with thorough cost-benefit analysis. It might surprise you. But also, I think that if there are other outcomes attached to a project, there might be community outcomes or wellbeing outcomes or things that might not use traditional financial measures, that some attempt is made to rationalise those as well. Do you understand what I'm saying, David?
I do.
Yeah, because there's a growth industry around alternative measurements than some of the traditional finance, like genuine progress indicators and those kinds of measures where you factor in, you pay this much for something, but you get a whole lot of well-beings out. So I'm really interested in how that's progressing as a space.
And that's I couldn't agree more with you. And in my report, I talk about this, not only financial things, but either the financial stuff and the non-financial things should be coming to us. Like a simple one is how many people use a service. You know, and that's not, and because they're not paying for it, the only way we can count, measure how many people are using it is counting it. And often we don't get, usage
And I suppose
data.
where my question comes from, you could add up how many people use a service, but say if it was a service that we provide for new migrants in our communities, there are a whole lot of other well-beings to take into consideration other than the pure numbers through the door and how much it costs to provide that service. We're putting people through drivers training, for example, or supporting them in health, getting access to their health services and things like that. So it has a well-being. Just want to be holistic about it, if I may. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Thank you. Mark.
Can I add, there's some quite useful work done by Well Trust and the other funders around impact and community impact, and that's factored into it perhaps. It means we don't have to reinvent matrices and wellbeings and stuff. So a lot of that work's actually already done. So can I suggest that staff integrate with those guys or, and see if there's anything useful in that?
Just on that matter, Mr. Chair, there is a lot of work that's done nationally as well.
Yeah.
And so the Treasury is currently working on their wellbeing frameworks. They're going to look at non-financial measures in terms of from a national perspective, and other authorities are trying to pick that up and see how they can adapt it. But also, Solgum is developing a bunch of wellness or wellbeing factors as well, and they're actually trying to coordinate the data sets that can be used to not only allow reporting within a council, but comparability with other council and those more social cultural aspects as well.
Yeah, so it's a sort of a case of everyone eventually following the one. So what do they say? A man with one watch knows the time, a man with two is never sure. And a general comment about the chair's report, I like the font. It was very nice.
I tossed and turned over that, I really did. Okay, are there any more questions, discussion? All right, I'll move the report be received. Do I have a seconder? James, those in favour, those against, carried unanimously. Okay, next item we're on is item 12, Business Transformation Report. We're doing this because Richard needs to get in and out. So that's page 117.
Good morning. This will be a presentation by myself as the approver. Unfortunately, Paul Menz can't be here today due to family commitments. So I'm going to take the report as read and answer any questions. And David's going to support me in doing so.
See anyone else? This thing's a bit slow putting people's names up, eh? Okay, I've got Ryan.
Richard, I read the report with much interest and delight.
Delight. It's better than a good, well-written report, isn't it, Mr. Chair?
Point 45, A, you bring in this term feasible intervention, which is cool.
Yep.
But you mentioned that...
Sorry, Ryan, what was the word you said?
Feasible intervention.
Okay.
It's the new version of causal nexus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Department of Fantasy Words?
You mentioned that if elected members decide not to spend your identified savings, you will still count it as savings. So how are you going to, how is that going to play out in reality in terms of what you discern or define as a legitimate saving versus something elected members don't?
Yeah, okay, so I think what it's going to look like is we're going to report everything and to council, even the items that we have previously reported that council or committees haven't agreed to progress with. But I'm not going to count that towards the ultimate target I'm after. So let's say there's $100 million I'm after, well, it's close to $104 million, which is what I promised. We will keep going after that amount, even if council hasn't delivered on the numbers. But I need to also hold the elected members to account in terms of what they may well have declined to progress with, that might well have generated some savings, so that I can actually then have a conversation at a certain point that every time I put an item up, for example, it gets knocked back, and my ability to close the gap on 104 million is starting to slide away on me. So I need some ability to have a robust conversation with you at a point in time in the future that we think it's impractical to deliver the numbers because I haven't been given the support by the elected members to challenge some of these opportunities. And with the term feasible intervention is there's a number of interventions, some of them by, I think a better word is realistic. Some of these interventions may not necessarily fit with where council's going, and if in the end council decides that it's just too far out there and it's too risk, we might not include it as a reasonable or feasible or realistic intervention. But my goal is to put up items that are legitimate and will. The challenge I've given Paul really simply is it's got to maintain or enhance the well-being of Hamiltonians, effectively service levels orientated, and it's got to be in a position where it drives for optimal outcomes from a financial point of view as well, so really broadly speaking, and however we can deliver that.
Okay, I accept your feasible answer.
Thank you. It was realistic as well.
Bella.
Thank you, Chair. Morena, Richard.
Morena.
Just a question on page 123 on the table. We've got a depreciation expense variance, and that aligns with notes 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the question there, if you look at the projection to 10 years of 43 million, if I'm reading this correctly, are we saying that this is a permanent savings in CapEx and a permanent savings in depreciation accordingly?
Yep, so it can be yes and can be no. So some items may well be a decision by this council not to invest until a later period. So that'll be a timing variance.
Yeah.
Some of them may well be through interventions by council, staff or otherwise that generates a different solution which costs less. And that different solution, if it's enduring, there'll be enduring savings.
Okay, so this is not a number that we can rely on yet, or are we saying this is enduring?
We're comfortable. I'm comfortable that we're on track. I'm comfortable for the year to date savings will be delivered. In terms of the full year budget, that's more of an indication that I'm heading in the right direction. I wouldn't count too much on the $90 million. It's been the absolute number that I'm going to hit, but the year to date information is I do have a little degree of comfort in.
Okay, thank you.
Paula. Excuse me.
Oh, okay, thank you. My question was going to be around what, having heard you articulate how you want to account for the savings that you've indicated to us that you can find. And I've never heard that feasible intervention word before, so I've learnt something with that. But in terms of feasible, does that mean that you will only make the savings where things are still consistent with a long-term plan? Because I think that was the understanding of the elected members, that we had the long-term plan, and then you suggested, or accepted, I suppose, that you could gain a lot of financial savings over 10 years. You offered, there's a lot of debate about that. So if you're going to make savings, I assume that's not at the cost of the LTP.
So I think that's what I did say during the presentation, that, and what I just said in response to Councillor Hamilton's question was, my goal is to maintain levels of service to the community. The challenge is how we deliver those levels of service, and in my view there's potentially other people that are better suited for doing that, and as part of this process it may well be collaborating with social enterprises, private organisations, public organisations, central government and so forth. So the intent of council to deliver X level of service will still be achieved. The vehicle by which we do so may be challenged, and there might be better people out there to do it.
Right, so the outcomes, that's fine. So I just wanted to be clear, the outcomes of the LTP that we all agreed upon, at the same time as we agreed to set a savings target for you, those both will be achieved. And if where they can't be, you're hoping to bring that conversation back to council.
Yeah, so if there is, or pretty much, if it's not, I don't have delegated authority to significantly change levels of services. So the 10-year plan and the annual plan are the commitment to the community about they pay this amount of money, they get this level of service. So I've got to bring those decisions back to council, and that's a 10-year plan, annual plan discussion. If I believe there's a huge opportunity to change things up, that's definitely going to be a conversation around council before I even progress down that track.
Thank you.
Siggy.
Thank you. Good morning, Richard. I've got a question on page 120, number 28, and I like that, but you might not, I don't know whether you can answer that, but it talks about, staff are encouraged and potentially rewarded, and it's always nice to have a little reward for something that you do well. And I'm just wondering, are there any already ideas floating around, or it's just a thought at the moment?
So we've put a lot of effort in terms of our overall culture, in terms of being less risk averse, and not necessarily going off and doing things willy-nilly. That's from the Department of Fantasy Words as well. But about being open to thinking about doing things differently, and that's happening. We know a lot of people bringing ideas forward. Last year I had an innovation program which I reported through to council, and that through the reward there was that we enabled staff the capacity to go off and bring their ideas to life. So where previously they'd come up with ideas and we didn't have the resource to do things, I managed to negotiate with a number of very supportive businesses in the community to put forward, I can't remember how much it was, over $50,000 of their money to council to actually bring some of these ideas to life. So the reward in that context was staff got to step away from their day job, so we backfilled it with the resource money we got from third parties for them to focus on bringing their idea to life. So that was a simple way of rewarding staff. We continue to do the same. Reward may well be half a day off. It may well be, to that extent, recognition. A lot of might well be that some might see this as a punishment, but we might well be that we publicise what they've done and bring some attention to it as well. We've got some extremely capable, competent, actually all of our staff are very innovative at all levels, right the way through, from the guys out in the street, right the way through the guys in the office, doing some great stuff, and I just want to foster that.
Fantastic, thank you.
Mark.
Thoroughly agree with you on that one, Richard, actually, I really do. So to the staff and to the public, can you make it really clear what the difference is between an efficiency and a saving in your phraseology here? Okay, so... Because one fills people with dread, obviously.
Yeah, so I think we say it somewhere in the report, I can't remember the section. So this is, first thing, this is not about belt tightening. We've done a lot of belt tightening. We've done a whole lot of just cut numbers with no real logic behind it. You know, you guys will do this with less people to the same standard. And so we're probably at a position where we are lean in that context. So, but what we're trying to say is we want to generate savings by doing things smarter. And so the word efficiency is sort of encapsulated in there as well. You know, we want to look at ways that we can ask different questions, drive different behaviours, collaborate with different people. So I'm not going out with a whole approach to cutting headcount to little levels of service. It's about looking at what the better way of doing it is. So savings is reduction in budgets. Efficiency is kind of how we're going to do it.
Right, okay, so one's outcomes. Yeah, I understand. Thank you. And the change who pays model, I understand you're not fully into that yet, because you mentioned that you're sort of up to, you're going through sequentially, just looking at page 120.
Yep.
How's that, have you sort of started hinting at central government and outside sources that we may be tapping them a bit harder?
Yeah, we've really well recognised. In the last few years, I've made a significant drive to increase the influence of my staff and general managers, myself, in terms of our stakeholders. Right. We're really well respected in central government land. Yep. And we do get the opportunity to use resource from central government, Auckland Council, other councils, so that's a saving to us. We can actually use other people's IP to build things. We've had financial contributions. HIF loan's a good example of that. But I also sent out to councillors yesterday a little project from down south where the community crowdfunded for what would be loosely termed public infrastructure as well. So a big part of thinking differently is the extent you can create an environment within the community for them to feel engaged. Right. And we had examples of that with the offers from the business community to upgrade parts of Garden Place. Yeah. So that stuff as well. Right. And it might well be that some things are better as user pays. I don't know, but we're going to go through that process. So there's the basic stuff we always do, like the debate we had during the 10-year plan about charging the Hamilton Gardens, for example. Yeah. But there's other stuff we can do as well. And getting $50,000 from the business community to drive my innovation program was a real small example of the influence we're trying to bring to bear and to generate these outcomes.
So it's inviting partners to the party, basically.
Oh, it's about, actually, to be honest, we have, well, another example is Well Networks is paying me about $150,000, not me personally, by the way.
Safe.
Not me personally.
Yeah.
Paying council $150,000 to fund my smart city resource because I couldn't afford to do it and I had no capacity in the budgets after the savings to achieve it. Right. They bought into the strategy for the city and it aligned with where they're going, and so they're more than happy to front up money towards that resource. So it meant that I could deliver a level of service that I'd promised council, but without the budget constraints. So that sort of discussion as well is part of what we're trying to do.
Cool, thank you.
Martin.
Yes, I mean, I think I get the general tenor that's very good. If I look at history and, just differentiate this from...
Chair, can I ask the member to please speak into the microphone, not turn away from him when he's talking to the... It's really hard, I know, as chair, it's really hard to hear that because you're not speaking anywhere near the microphone.
Well...
Because you want to be polite and look at Richard, don't you?
Do you want me to sit in front of you, Deputy Mayor? Okay.
Just, the speaker doesn't work.
Yeah, no, look, I realise one of my traits has been quietly spoken, so I apologise for that.
Your financial wisdom.
I'll try and rarely raise my voice. I know historically, this, I get where you're going, and presumably this is a total differentiation from the historic notion of outsourcing, where, for example, we would outsource a cleaning contract, we'd outsource something, but in reality, for the workers in that area, their conditions and wages could actually go down and down. And I'm just trying to get a notion that we still, if something's been done in our name, in a more collaborative way, and I get all that, that we still want whoever's doing that in our name to be a good employer.
Yep, so it's a really good point, Deputy Mayor. So one of the things that I've been working on, and I've talked to a few academics, which don't get too disheartened, I'm getting application back rather than just theory, is how we can build some social contracts with commercial organisations. So how can we get them to effectively deliver more efficiencies, drive better outcomes, but in the same time have a relationship with our community. And we see that through the Infrastructure Alliance, for example. They will go out of their way to engage with our community and make sure that because they've got Hamilton City Council somewhere in their name as the Hamilton City Council down our Infrastructure Alliance, they will make sure they maintain good relationships with their stakeholders and so forth. So it's trying to get that balance. It's very much front of mind. and very much a big part of what we do is if we go down a track which will impact on staff in one way, shape or form, a really robust change management program as well. But nothing has yet been put in place to that effect, but that's part of the thinking.
Thank you.
Dave?
Thanks. I want to explore paragraph 45 on page 121 a little bit. You've got an A and a B in there, and I regard them as two completely different animals. I think one's a nice sleek lion, the other's a bit of a warthog. Questions relating to that. 45A says basically where the intervention identified by management is a saving, that gets recognised in our accounts, even if we choose to spend that on. But that's two different. There's a management decision to save according to our LTP, our budget.
Yep.
And then there is a separate council decision that actually has nothing necessarily to do with the savings.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Yeah, and it's a bit like, I'm checking the analogy, is that the sale of pensioner housing, we had originally tried to say spend 2 million of the income, the revenue from that on a new housing initiative, but in actual fact, we saved the whole lot, we got the whole lot as revenue, and we spent a different 2 million. It didn't really matter where it came from.
Yep.
So that sort of scenario.
Yep. So, for example, if I come along with a saving that generates $5 million, right, per annum, so it's 50 million over 10 years, I believe I've done my job identifying a savings. If council believes, giving all their constraints and whatever else they want to spend that money on something else, that's always your decision.
Okay, so on to the warthog, 45B.
Oh, so I thought A was the warthog.
No, that's fair enough. That's understandable.
Yep.
45B, where a recommendation to council or a committee for a feasible intervention to reduce costs or save money is not approved, you still count it as a savings. Now, is that not, for a savings to be counted, it has to be approved or identified by council. If there's no savings, council, that's your bad luck if council says, we don't want you to sack half the staff and outsource it all to Waikato District because that would not be good for our ratepayers, so you can't identify that as a saving.
Yep, so I think yes, that's what it says there. I've now defined it a little bit better based on the question from Councillor Hamilton earlier. So what we're going to do, you'll get a report of savings that are approved by council. You'll also get that as savings that haven't been approved by council. If I get to a point where basically every time I bat something up, it gets batted away, and I'm finding it hard to achieve my savings, I need to have a different conversation with council about whether I can achieve the overall number. Because I believe there's savings there. I think we can do things differently and actually deliver better levels of service. But if there's the downside that I can't convince council of the benefit of doing it, and I can't,
But sure, it is only a saving, surely, if it's something that's approved by council, whether it's just in the normal course of events or a special approval.
Yeah, so there will be savings that I do that I'll count that don't need your approval because they don't change levels of services, efficiencies and so forth, right? So that's one, let's park that to one side. But if I come up with an example of outsourcing something, right? Let's say I can outsource something and I can go to the market and it's going to save us $5 million per year, and you don't agree with that. I'm not going to count it as a savings in terms of my $100 million target, but I will regularly report on those items so cumulatively you can see, not because I'm trying to shame anyone, it's because I want to have a conversation with you guys at some point. If every time I add something onto the list, it gets bounced off and I'm getting nowhere near my $100 million savings, I need to talk to you guys and you guys need to hold me to account on whether or not you think I want to actually hit my $100 million target.
That's true, but that's a political or a employment relationship discussion, is it not, as opposed to 45B, the warthog, which actually says it's going to be listed as a savings in a financial sense.
Yep. So
it's not.
So I'm saying we're not going to count it as a savings, but I am going to report it and record it, and it will come back to this committee because it will reflect the direction we're heading in terms of the work I'm doing. So if I, for example, have 3 items I flush up and they all get knocked back, I need to understand from council what particular about those issues that you don't agree with, so I can adapt my approach. So that's the other aspect to it as well, Councillor Dave.
Why this committee? Is it not a full council thing? Because they'll be decisions that aren't necessarily made for financial reasons.
Yeah, absolutely bang on. In fact, some of the decisions won't come to this committee for approval because they won't be delegated down to it. So it's more of a throwaway statement in terms of which committee, but back to the elected members through whatever appropriate committee.
Okay, thanks. Actually, I hear warthogs aren't such bad animals. They've got a bad rap.
I was about to do a sound effect, but that would have been better.
Okay, thank you. Richard, you talked about level of service. Now, level of service is and sometimes is an objective measure, sometimes it's not an objective measure. So if you say, and I'll just use some warthogs that I've brought up a number of times, like FMG Stadium or Eyesight or Claudelands and things like that. And over time, for some reason, and this would be an apocalyptic world that I would not want to be part of, but say we don't stop, rugby just stops losing its appeal. Yep. And people are just not going to the stadium. And therefore the stadium is not generating any revenue or not generating a sufficient amount of revenue. You bring the thought, okay, we need to bulldoze the stadium and turn it into a park or turn it into a high-rise apartment or a hotel or something like that. Council says, no, even though there used to be 30,000 people going to games, there's now 45 people going to games. Those people, they're citizens, they're ratepayers, they need to be looked after, that's a level of service. When do you judge that we have arbitrary, we are preventing you from getting your savings just because of a level of service thing, which is a subjective thing? And the examples I used may or may not resonate with people, but there will be examples across every one of the things we do where there's a certain service of level of service threshold, that will vary around the council table.
Yeah, so I think we put actually, despite the fact that some of it is subjective, we do put a lot of effort into our levels of service as part of our 10-year plan. From a staff point of view, councillors review them, question us, and we sign off on them. So we do. That's our primary level of service document. We have other levels of service below that. I think the good example is the work we've done in terms of bowling clubs. No one's using the bowling clubs as much as they used to, and so this council is making an active decision to choose to do other things. Now, we don't invest significant money in it, but if you made a decision to get rid of bowling clubs because no one's using them and that's going to save some maintenance money, I wouldn't necessarily count that as savings from this program, because that's a council decision on business as usual. But let's say that my team come up with an innovative way of consolidating bowling clubs with other activities to generate like a hub of sport, let's say a sports hub or some reason like that, which is going to have a whole lot of efficiency through co-location and so forth. I probably would count that if it's going to generate outcomes.
But say that didn't get accepted by the council for lots of very good reasons, because I know that the grannies they love their bowling and all that sort of stuff.
So if it's going to save $5 million, my target's $100 million. If you voted for it and accepted it, my target would be $95 million. If you don't vote for it and you don't accept it, my target's still $100 million. So I'm not going to count that towards the offsetting the target. But what I will do is I'll track the fact that I provide an opportunity for $5 million and try to understand why council didn't make a decision to progress with it. A, so I can change my approach going forward. But B, there'll be a certain critical point. If I've got 20 of those $5 million projects that have been kicked to touch, I could have saved $100 million, but I'm still got a $100 million target, and I'm starting to run out of ideas. I've got a conversation to come back to you as your chief executive and say, I'm struggling here.
Yeah, but we're moving then into an employment type issue, aren't we?
We're moving into an employment type issue, and you're also moving into a situation whereby we probably need to sit back and look at our 10-year plan again and have a conversation about what's realistic in terms of our expenditure numbers.
And some employment issues are encouragement.
Yeah, I like the idea of encouragement.
Okay.
And I like to see that free-flowing encouragement right now, but no, it's fine.
Hey, just on paragraph 7, can you just re-imaging the way in which council works on behalf of our communities, requires blah, blah, blah. Can you just expand on that a little bit?
So if you look at section 20 on page 119,
paragraph 20.
Paragraph 20 on page 19, right through to paragraph 23, that expands on it.
Okay. There's an element of what I talked about in my chair's report. This is where I think cost-benefit analysis will be important for everyone, so that we can get or more visibility of the cost-benefit analysis, so that we can get the actual costs and the actual benefits, be they financial or otherwise, social, to get more visibility to the decision makers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Paragraph 10. You finish off by saying the savings proposed in the consultation document from 6 million to 10 million. Can you just explain that? I couldn't quite follow what you're doing there.
So when the original consultation document went out, I had not agreed. I worked with the mayor in terms of a level of savings to deliver on in the draft document. But then ultimately we went through the 10-year plan process, and that increased those
Oh,
savings.
that's right, during the 10-year
Yep.
plan process, that got ratcheted up, is that what we're talking about?
Yep.
Okay. Page 120, bullet points D and E, when you read those, aren't they the same thing?
Well, one is more about who pays, the other one's about who delivers. And it might be that we have community involved in delivering services.
But when we say the community, they in effect, the community is paying with
community-
time or use of their facilities?
Community is a broad term, but external stakeholders providing, so firstly it's community-led development, so that's actually spending a lot of time in understanding what the community really wants. And that there might identify level of service changes, for example. Because we might engage with the community and the level of service we're set, they don't really care about. And so that gives us an opportunity to come back to council and say, we've done all this work, let's adapt our level of service, might generate savings, for example. But the difference is one is about the financial contribution to paying for it, the other one is about doing better community design to deliver better outcomes, and actually having them involved in the solution as well.
Okay, thank you. And page 122, the bottom one, the vacancy factor, this has always concerned me, that if you say we've got vacancies, but we're achieving our levels of service, then by definition, those vacancies are surplus.
No, well, no, it's not by definition, you could assume that. But these vacancies happen in different positions across the council at different times. So there's always a, I think our turnover is 15%.
So you're talking about a business as usual thing?
Yeah, so people turn over in different positions, and basically what I've asked my GMs to do is effectively a suck it up approach. For a period of time, don't replace that person, so we can get some budget upside. And what the downside of that is, and that's the situation we've currently got with a number of our teams, is because we're managing that quite hard, we have morale and potentially tension caused by overwork. So that's the consequence.
Which is kind of my point. So the level of service to some degree is you've got grumpy people answering phones or people not answering phones because there's not enough people there. So that is a level of service.
Well, it's potentially an internal level of service, but we do our best to ensure that what we commit to the community.
If I can help.
Please do.
The vacancy factor recognises that when somebody leaves our organisation, it takes some time to replace that person, and therefore that salary sits there, and it's not being used. So the reality is,
most people have to give notice, and we start the search not well before the. Every now and then you get someone to leave abruptly.
It's an active intervention though, and some of the challenges I've got with my GMs is before they replace anyone, they need to understand whether or not what they're replacing is the best way. The current position, is that the best way of delivering that level of service as well? So sometimes it's an opportunity.
Which is my point. There's a level of service impact, or we're padding our staff out.
No, there's
some of our roles are quite technical, and it's not easy to replace that technical role within 30 days. Our staff have to give 30 days notice and they leave, and sometimes it can take 6 months to find a suitable replacement. And we do, through our recruitment process, we focus on making sure that when we recruit, we have people who come in the organisation that have the right mindset to be able to deliver on our 10-year plan. And sometimes it's difficult. So that our annual salary budget is, $75, $80 million. So when we look at that number and we take it as a percentage, it's not a large percent. It's 2 to 3%. So it just recognises sometimes it's difficult to get the right people into the organisation, and therefore it's capturing that freed up money, if you like, in our salaries line, and that's basically what it is.
Okay, because this is a really significant part of your savings. This is
and it was identified,
35% of your savings.
It was identified in June as one of the things we do, and it is one of the things we do. Look, put this way, I would.
If you can't get that, you won't be able to get your target.
No.
I mean, if that goes to zero, you've got you might find something glorious out there, but
Yeah. So a big chunk of what we do, always, we're a big employment base, right, is managing our staff effectively and balancing off what we need to do to deliver to the community. And if I could employ everyone stay, I'd have a whole lot less staff that are working significant hours. There's a whole lot of people in this organisation that are putting a significant amount of work in. So to say that's padding, it's incorrect, because the level of stress that this approach we take causes on the organisation is significant. So we are under-resourced because of not necessarily active decisions, but also on our ability to recruit. Building inspectors, for example, is a challenge. We've had that conversation around the finance table before. There are some legitimate reasons, there are some external factors, there are some active decisions by my GMs that they will optimise the way they deliver some of the outcomes, still deliver the outcome, but just in a different way. We try to do our best to avoid loading staff up, and we do our best to manage the impact, but sometimes it's just impractical to completely do so, and it's not necessarily budget constraints that lead to that. It's, like I said, the building impact of building inspectors and so forth.
Yeah, and the impact is that presumably, and you hear about it in certainly building inspectors, that the level of service drops.
Yep, and those ones we actively look to engage. So there's not the decision there is not to, our decision there is to recruit as much as we can and not actually have the savings from that.
Okay. Well, I don't want to bang on it too much, but it's a really significant amount of your savings, and I'm still not 100% comfortable that you can get this. By definition, if you're understaffed, you must be not delivering. Anyway,
a big challenge here, right, is the more we drive a culture change in this organisation, the turnover rate's reducing. And so your challenge before, if we don't deliver on that, it makes it harder to deliver my other savings. We know that our reliance on that vacancy factor will continue, the actual impact of that vacancy factor will continue to reduce as our staff satisfaction, engagement and our turnover, they increase and our turnover decreases. It's going to be harder. We're going to have to rely on more of the other interventions to get our number over time.
I think the other topic there, Richard, is that the funnel of work staff need to do is flows, ebbs and flows. And if you asked any staff member today whether they had any spare time, you would get a sense in the organisation that staff are working extremely hard to deliver for not only elected members but for the community. So staff are doing their best and they try and say no, and you've heard Richard say no in this forum in terms of when we are asking staff to do something, we just don't have the capacity. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the staff because we know how hard they're working.
Okay, just one other question. We're receiving this report, so if we receive this report, we're acknowledging the definitions and the targets somewhat that you have put in here?
You've already received a report about the targets. This is an update against that report. So by receiving the report, you're acknowledging that I've reported to you against my instruction to report against.
Okay.
Can I just make one point? If you go on to page 123, you'll see in the middle of the table, there's we've registered that we've got some general savings 6 months into the year. Later, when we go through the annual report, annual monitoring report, you'll see that sometimes costs aren't linear and therefore lumpy, and that number could change depending on what costs we incur through the organisation in the second 6 months. So I think it's just appropriate we highlight that.
Okay, thank you. Paula.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just got caught up on the end of that. I was trying to listen to the end of that conversation about staff and staff numbers. And I think it's fair to say that I'm aware of a few areas in which staff feel, for a variety of reasons, a little pressured at the moment, not able to deliver without putting considerable extra time in. Now, how does, or effort at this time, how does council keep, we don't want to be managers, we don't want to be recruiters, we don't want to do your job, but how do we keep track of staff wellbeing, staff load? Where would that come through? Does that come through risk and audit at some stages? Do you run surveys? Do we see that?
David can answer this question.
So fundamentally, the health and safety and wellbeing report that goes to the audit and risk is it captures an overarching view of staff's wellbeing, and that report comes twice a year to council, which is new. On top of that, it's basically Richard and GM's roles to keep elected members aware of where we've got some pain points, and we will do that. You know, we have some great staff that are passionate about what they do, and we often say, focus on your top three. If you've got something that that needs to be done, let's have a look at the priorities and see if we can manage expectations. If we, at the end of that, come to a point where we just need to increase our staff numbers to get a certain amount of work done for elected members, or come back to elected members to say there's some areas here that we need to delay, that'll be the conversation we bring.
So in some cases it might be the actual people you might on the ground that you need. In other cases, it might be doing something a bit more efficiently. Is that what you're saying? And
Yeah.
we would know about that if there was an issue. We'd know in risk and audit.
One of our parts of our culture program are to ensure that our leaders actively get engaged with the workload of our employees. We have this thing we could talk about set, enable, expect, and it's having good, robust conversations to understand exactly what the level of work people are working on, and to make sure that we have a check-in point that is a robust conversation, and through that process gets filtered up to wherever we need to have that conversation, although we do give autonomy to leaders to make decisions around setting priorities and giving authority to people to stop doing some stuff, because their well-being is paramount.
That's right, but you can be in a rock and a hard place when governance sets a direction and a timeline and staff.
On top of that, though, we have a number of programs in place that enable staff, if they don't feel comfortable to talk to their managers, they can talk to peer support. We have a active peer support program around council. We also have an EAP program, employee assistance program, so that's an external body that is confidential, and they can go and talk through and get counselling through that area, or just talk to somebody else who they feel comfortable with. So we feel confident that staff have avenues to be able to raise concerns if they're feeling overly stressed, and we monitor that.
Thank you. I'll just have a keener look when we're at risk and audit to make sure that what you'll provide there is helping me to know that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no further speakers. I'll move the report be received. Mark, seconded. We've got enough people here? Yeah, I think we have. Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. All right, we'll just vote on the voices. Sorry, you want to debate, do you? Yep.
Yeah, look, I acknowledge the pressure that you've got, Richard, to deliver this, and there's that walk, you've got to walk the line, so to speak. But I'm excited about it, not just because of the fiscal benefits, but because of the changing behaviours, the innovation, that sort of stuff. I think it's a really exciting space. I think you've really taken this on well, so I just want to encourage you, and look forward to seeing this thresh out over the next few years.
Mark.
Very similar. I think I've voiced right from the start, I'm quite excited about the program. I think you're the right man to do it, Richard, and you've got the right people around you. Echo your sentiments about the staff working really, really hard and being incredibly passionate, and it's an absolute joy to go out to the community and be able to put your hand on your heart and say, I haven't met anyone who's not passionate about their job in the council building. And so I think it behoves us as council representatives to represent you and what you're doing. With this, there will be some hard conversations when we don't get our own way, but I think we've got to keep paramount in our mind that one of the biggest things that came out of the 10-year plan was people want savings. If they're going to be paying more rates, they want to see stuff done a hell of a lot better, and these are the conversations we're going to have with the community. So, keep it up.
James.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard. Look, it's great to see the savings that are planned for this. And I think you were going on about staffing issues and everything else. I think you're pretty proud of the staff you've got. Of late, I've actually pushed quite a significant amount of work onto the staff in regards to footpaths, roading issues, and growth and plant and grass maintenance that we've got done pretty quickly. Like, I put it through, and it's been done almost immediately, and the public is seeing that. So, the people I've been dealing with, Eva Lisa, Robin Denton and Zeki Fisk, have just gone out of their way to keep their staff working, so well done.
Paula.
Thank you very much. It was always a fairly ambitious target that you accepted in the LTP process. From my point of view, it's not a small amount that you're seeking to save, and I support the comments of previous councillors around the community's expectation that we should run as lean as possible. And I do recall Mr. CE saying that we were already reasonably tight, so tight, I think your words were, that we squeak. So we're really trying to do things quite differently. I am interested in the levels of staffing, but I'm also, as I said to you transparently during the LTP, I'm interested in keeping a close look on what gives. So you make savings, we need to be able to justify those to the general public through your guidance, and make sure that what we said we were going to deliver does get delivered, because sometimes when things slip backwards, and I guess we have some examples of some asset management that for whatever reason, and I'm not casting any blame on people, are in a state that they need to be brought up. If things slip away, it's really, then you're in catch-up game. So I want to make sure that, yes, we're running lean, yes, we're efficient and effective, but we're not creating a future legacy of costs. And I know that's really difficult for someone, so you've got a big challenge, and I wish you the very best in it.
Thanks, Paula. Andrew.
So, Richard, I believe that you can do this. This always had the political component to it right from the start, and I believe that we're in this to achieve this savings as much as you. So this isn't just you, this is a relationship between you and the board, and I believe together we understand the importance of this and the responsibility that goes with this to work with you to ensure that you do get there as well. So either way, I do believe that you're very good at what you do and that you will deliver these savings. On a slightly different bent, but a similar thing is that I believe the level of the staff morale in this building is the highest I've ever seen it. I believe the staff enjoy working here under your leadership, and that is a spin-off and a part of this whole savings as well, as where the staff are working with you to achieve those savings. And again, it's elected members working with you on your ideas to let you implement those or not, but overall you will get the savings, and you will bring the staff with you on a journey where they'll work with you to achieve it as well. So I just want to overall just congratulate you for your leadership.
Thanks, Siggy.
Mr. Chair. Well, I just want to add to what has been said, and I was nervous about the amount you stated at the start that you wanted to save, but I just want to talk again about the staff as well, and I think from years gone by when I was lobbying in council, and the staff was always very restrained, and I just found in the last 2 years, or especially last year, that you've actually given the staff a lot more freedom to do things, and I think that's wonderful, and that reflects on their work and their responsiveness and their support to us as well, and as much as we can give support to them. So really excited for the future, and yeah, really excited that we have got room to move and we can do things a bit differently, and that there's a lot more how can I say, open-mindedness to everything. So really enjoy that, and yeah, looking forward to an amazing future and savings. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved. Any debate? Oh, that was the debate, wasn't it? That was debate, yep, okay. Hard to tell sometimes. I'll move it. Sorry, I'll put it. Just go to the voices. Those in favour? Those against? Is there any? Okay, unanimously. Thank you.
Councillor Rob was sitting back from this one. He wasn't here for the discussion. So he didn't vote.
Yes. Oh, beg your pardon. Yeah, sorry. Yep. You pulled your... And Dave and Martin are going to the Joe's funeral. Thank you. Okay, item 7, page 17. Finance Committee draft schedule of reports. I shall move.
Take report as read.
Okay, are there, I've just one question. On paragraph 3, we use the word, the Chief Executive, blah, 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 and with the word whole of council. Does whole of council mean a council standing committee? So it says whole of council committees.
That means what's in the brackets, so all of the different committees that are part of council.
Ah, okay, so they, okay, I'm used to those being called the standing committees. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Just want to make sure it's the same thing. All right. Cool. I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Is there any debate or questions? So Mallet, Casson. Okay, we'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item 9, capital portfolio monitoring.
No, item 8.
I just ticked that. Item 8, non-financial organisational performance. Page 23.
Good morning, councillors. Chair Mangai Murray. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Julie Clausen taka ingoa, he Unit Manager, Strategy and Corporate Planning aho, ati Kona Hero o Kirikiriroa. With me is...
Ko Katie Tucker Ingoa, Hair Business Performance Advisor aho, e te konihera o te Kirikiriroa kia ora tātou.
We would like to take the report as read and answer any questions. Thank you.
Mark.
Kia ora, guys. Thank you very much for your report. Just page 27, the quality of life survey, and 26. Are there any other potential surveys out there that we could base this on? It strikes me as a reasonably costly and time-consuming survey. Are you aware of any others that are measuring a similar thing that we could potentially outsource?
Just to give some context about the Quality of Life survey, it's a survey that we participate in with the 7 other, I think 7 now, metro councils. So it allows us to give us a benchmark against other councils as well. And by running it as a joint program, it's actually very cost effective.
Okay.
So it gives us a good base joint position, and we get a lot of detail about our council as well. In terms of being able to ask those questions that are important to us, which is about, the quality of life, how proud people of Hamilton, what they're feeling, there's a number of different ways that we can ask those questions, and so we're just exploring those options at the moment, working with communications and engagements about how we can have a more regular conversation with the community, because 2 years is mostly a long time between drinks, I suppose, and we don't have the ability to understand or see the things that are impacting those results. So we want to look at how do we actually engage with the community on those questions on a more frequent basis, and maybe on a more informal basis as well.
Yeah, okay. I just want to test it a little bit more. Can you please give us some examples of where we've changed anything as a result of the results of the survey?
I can't give you a specific example. What I can say is that we use information out of the quality of life alongside the information out of the community profiles. So we have a similar survey that we run across our community to get us the next level of layering down. So community profiles goes down to east and west wards, and then down, broken down further within those. And what we are doing at the moment is looking across all of that data and seeing where we're seeing variation in our community's perception. So between Lance's community group and the information that we have from the Quality of Life, we're in the process of doing that analysis at the moment. We're waiting for Stats New Zealand's census data to come in so we can layer that across as well, with the view that that will be able to identify areas in our community that have a different view about something than the rest of the community, and then we can start identifying what, as a council, we need to do to support that community.
So, I guess I'm heading towards there's a lot of bit about, elected officials, and do you think you're being listened to, and is it being well run, and I'm leading to a question here, and it's, a lot of it depends on what was in the paper the day before they took it. Is that useful? And I'm not trying to abscond from any responsibility, but is that useful? I mean, how do you go about changing our behaviour or our, the problems that may be surfacing in the communities perception.
Yep. So I think that's actually a really good example to raise, Councillor Bunting. One of the things I know, and I hope democracy don't mind me speaking about this, but one of the things that they have recognised is that we know nationally Hamilton has a very low voting rate, and we think that's similar for our local government. We have a very low turnout rate, and one of the projects they've identified is they're working on a whole program to try and engage with our community to encourage people to participate in democracy.
Right.
Because by people participating, then you become better informed, and then we make decisions that are more effective of the
but I mean,
community.
they can get that information from the amount of people who have voted without having that included in the quality of life survey.
Yep.
So how often do you review what you're asking?
The Quality of Life survey, it's reviewed every time, so
Right.
every 2 years they pull together a project team across the councils and have a discussion about with us all about what are any emerging issues that we'd like. There is a requirement to try and keep the same base questions because otherwise we don't see good trend data, but there is also the opportunity to add additional things that we want to consider.
So last question on this one, because I'm hammering away at it, but to your mind, what's been the biggest red flag that's come up where it's made a difference and we've been able to change anything?
I think the 4 that we've identified in our 10-year plan were the important ones.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's been interesting, a couple of things that came out of the Quality of Life survey that support, I suppose, council's approach is that people's quality of life has dropped a little bit, and the biggest driver for that is actually around financial constraints, in particular housing affordability. So not only did our council see that, but all of the councils, except for some of the more rural ones or smaller metros, saw that trend. So Auckland, us, Wellington and Christchurch all saw that housing affordability was a big influence on people's view of their quality of life. So that for helps go, yes, are we putting that issue of housing affordability and growth as a prime issue for our community? And we had that in our 10-year plan, so that supported that.
Great. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Kate.
Siggy.
And thank you for the report. I just got one question on page 26. It's about the GDP, and basically what it is, it's about, you know, what has been bought and sold, and we look pretty good. But it could be cigarettes or alcohol sale that's going up. So it's not really specific. And the government has already said that the GDP might not be the best measure for a healthy community. Have you heard of any other ways of measuring something similar, or, you know, in that realm?
As you must be aware, I know that it's been talked about this morning, is Treasury are putting forward their 4 capital frameworks, of which one of them is the economy, and they are working alongside Stats New Zealand to develop what they call the Living Standards Framework, and Stats New Zealand are doing what they call Stats Aotearoa, which is a set of indicators that will be assigned to each of those capitals. So we're waiting for that. That's meant to be being delivered by June this year. Okay. And so that's where I think we need to look, and because that's something that across the sector, both ourselves but also within communities, everyone's going to try and work towards those.
Okay, thank you.
Paula.
On page 34, just about the consents and targets, there's a 2.8-year capacity gap in business land zoned and with supply to infrastructure in the city. So then I read down, that's mostly relating to industrial land and our pushes on Te Rapa north of the city. When will we see the work being done in the Hamilton Metro Spatial Plan? Because we haven't had a lot of oversight of that, to be honest. We've had a lot of conversation around housing land. We've had a far less conversation around where industrial land lies and where it needs to go.
I'll get the GM of Growth to answer that. Just can I say one thing, Jen, first, is that this is an example of, this is a new measure. So this was a new measure for the 10-year plan. So it's the first time we've actually measured down to this, the detail between residential and commercial type land. So it's been a good thing, the fact that it's identified that.
I support that, and the fact that it had a red dot, of course, drew my attention to to ask those questions. So thank you.
Good morning. So in terms of the Metro Spatial Plan, that is part of the Hamilton to Auckland Corridor Plan, which was endorsed by the Minister last week. So the Greater Hamilton Metro Spatial Plan is a key project within that, and initial conversations and work and scoping has started in terms of what that project is going to look like over the coming months. So I think there was actually an initial scoping workshop on that yesterday. So it's really, really early days, and we are very keen to make sure you are all in the loop in terms of progress and where all of that is going. The other key part of the conversation in that space at the moment is governance and how all the projects within the corridor workshop and the growth conversation for the region is managed going forward. So that's your Metro Spatial Plan question. Your other question was around industrial land. So we will continue to report the metrics around measuring industrial land through the information reports via growth and infrastructure. And also in March council meeting, you will see a report come through on the prioritisation of the plan changes, and one of those plan changes is the one we talked about towards the end of last year in terms of advancing the rezoning of the Turapa North Deferred Industrial Land.
Thank you. Just one further question to that, if I may. In terms of industrial land, will we also be looking at where new areas go in, but where previous areas have changed their use? Because we are doing a little bit of industrial to residential potentially, so it's all about the overall quantum. Now, that used to be discussed in Future Proof at one point in time. Now we have another plan to look at it from a different angle, so just need some oversight of that.
So that will be part of both of those conversations. So it is absolutely industrial land, and the provision of industrial land from a Greater Hamilton perspective is a fundamental part of the Metro Spatial Plan that is worked through the corridor work, and also the conversation about what's happening to our current industrial land will be is part of that plan change conversation. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yes, thank you. Thanks. Yes, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. On page 26, about 2/3 of the way down there, we talk about the financial strategy of debt to revenue. I noticed there that for the 18-19 period, the forecast was for 165%, and yet we came in at, for the last 12 months, ended December last year, it was 132%. Quite considerable savings there, is that correct?
Can I ask the GM of Corporate?
That is correct.
How did we achieve that?
So the debt to revenue is a measure of not only revenue but debt, and our debt forecast, we spent a lot less debt than we had planned to, so that's what would have driven that result.
So we're in pretty good shape then?
We are.
Yeah, thanks.
That's done because there's a whole lot of work that hasn't been done, and perhaps it's work that could have mitigated the absence of industrial land and or residential land, I'm not sure, but who knows where.
Yeah, there's two sides to the coin, right? So if our revenue is above where we thought it would be, we're paying off debt quicker. If we're deferring capital programs because we have some challenges caused by third parties, then that means we're struggling to get those projects done in the time we'd originally promised.
James.
Ladies, just a couple of quick questions, and probably somebody else will probably answer this. The water supply, page 36, the target of no more than 16% of real water loss from the network structure. that seems like a very high threshold, 16%. So if you had 100 litres at 16 litres, you'd lose. Why is the threshold so high, and what causes that amount of loss of water in the system?
Ask the GM of operations.
So if I can through the chair, so the 16% is a measurement that is assessed through the system, and it's a decreasing measure that we have in the 10-year plan. So through the 10-year plan, that water loss factor is actually scheduled we aim to decrease that. And so we have a target based on our existing infrastructure that we have in place in terms of the water loss. So the water loss actually comes from maybe some leaks of joins and pipes that are underground. So just remembering our water pipes are sight unseen. So we only see it when it's detected, or private property you have water leaks. And so it's assessed on all of those types of sort of losses that we have in the network in terms of water. And it isn't an unusual thing to have water loss, because I guess you can expect the range of pipes that we have in the ground can span for a number of years, and they do have a life, and they are joined, so they're not one continuous pipe.
I think a key point that Evelisa makes is that our target for reduction in water loss reflects our interventions from a capital program or a renewal program perspective.
Yep.
So over time it will reduce, and that's probably a middle of the range water loss for local authorities. It's probably quite a low. It is a low water loss for a local authority that's not on water meters. We do very well with our interventions and leak detections. So it's pleasing. Probably 4 years ago, it was up about 30%. What could be a number then, quick, it's on the record. It was above 20% 4 years ago.
It was closer
you were
to
running
20.
Yeah, it was closer to 30. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the data from last year, we had a 14.5% water loss, so we're putting interventions in place so we can accurately measure those and then put the interventions in place, so actually fix the network where we know those losses are occurring to remove them.
Okay, good stuff. And my last question, transport page 44, the target of 1,380 cyclists biking into the central city a day. Is it a day? That would include school kids, I take it, into the central city? I'm just wondering how you measure that. How will that be measured? Because the amount of cyclists coming into the city at the moment is quite negligible.
So I'm going to pass that over to Jason because he has the details, if I may. But I do believe that there are sensors on particular cycling routes that do actually count and recorded in terms of cyclists passing.
We have sensors at both ends that pick up people, where they get on, and the number of people who may get off, and we just calculate when they get off at this end, a number there, but also we do like the actual physical survey as well, with staff actually being out on the streets as well.
All right. So will that click scooters and everything else coming across, or?
Yeah, we capture that information as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what is the figure, what's the 1,300 figures? That's bikes. Not including scooters and things.
We will capture like pedestrians, scooters as well on those survey days, but the sensors on the Western Rail Trail will pick up the cyclists.
Only the cyclists?
May pick up the scooters as well, but primarily will be for the cyclists. And that's open, of course, of the type of vehicle it is. The scooter is the same size and weight of a cyclist, so they might pick up those as well.
The sensors are quite, you can actually calibrate them quite finely, you know, and that's part of the improved data tracking that we can do and data logging we can do.
So just to be clear, what is it picking up at the moment? Two-wheel push bikes and e-bikes and scooters, or not those things?
Large scooters, because it's effectively, from what I understand what Jason's saying, if there's a significant large scooter, not one of the small ones, no, but if some of the scooters, the larger ones, for example, the one that the mayor rides, it may well pick that up as a bike. But he doesn't use the Western Rail Trail, so he's not included in those numbers.
Sorry, mate. You done? Okay, thanks, James. Paula?
Following up from Councillor Cassin's questions around water, can we please have another look at that? Because we did have recently, I'm not saying that what you said wasn't correct, can we get an oversight of that? Because recently we had a day in which the water usage was phenomenal, mind you, was 34 degrees in Hamilton and super, super hot. But we're doing different things, there's different challenges for different parts of the city, and I want to get a handle on that. You're quite right, there's very old parts of the city like Hamilton East with very old types of pipes that we're trying to very slowly replace. We haven't got the budget to do that as fast as anything. Oh, you're biting your lip, Chris. No, and also wanted to know what we're learning from the global metering. We don't have household metering, but we have metering in different development parts of the city. What's that telling us, and could we get some oversight of that?
Yes, we can include at the Growth and Infrastructure Committee some information in terms of water use and water loss, if
that would be good. Because, you know, from a governance perspective, we must push for the most effective use of water. We have to. Thank you.
Bella.
Korua. Just a question following on the transport page 44. The impact of safety improvements on reducing death and serious harm on Hamilton roads. I can understand why it's green, 25 versus 27. However, when I look at the commentary, 3 deaths at this point in time versus 4 for the full year. I guess my question is, why isn't this orange? I thought there'd be more weighting on deaths versus serious harm. They're all very serious, but yeah.
If I can through the chair, we have the same feeling, like having a green light when you're signalling someone has actually lost their life on our network doesn't seem right, and I guess it is that reporting function. So we do have the Vision Zero that we report through the Growth and Infrastructure Committee, so it's something that we can actually look at to understand. And so there is a target in our 10-year plan, which is, again, you having a target, but it's a measure that's reported through the DIA, our Department of Internal Affairs measures. So it's something that we have to report on against that measure and understanding the human aspect of that green dot too. So
thank you. And my second question is, who is Scooter Man? Yeah. Okay.
We were actually going to find out the name of Scooter Man. We do know him, but he has changed. Scooter Man is an innovation project through our Infrastructure Alliance. He actually literally rides a scooter on our footpaths and takes a video and assesses the condition of our footpaths. So he's been tagged as Scooter Man, and he apparently did ride a scooter as well to work, so it's sort of appropriate for him.
Very innovative. Thank you.
Leo.
Just one other, if I may. On page 44, about halfway down there, we've got the measure for the fatal and serious crashes. My understanding is last year we had 9 deaths in the city, and yet it doesn't seem to line up with what the outcome for the forecast for the year ended, which was 4 deaths with 52 serious. Perhaps Jason, you might be able to help. Page 44. Because I think last year was one of the highest we've had. And yet we're still green.
We will look into that, but just determine whether that's a calendar year versus a financial year for the reporting.
Yeah.
That was a problem all the way through. It was difficult, sorry Leo, it was difficult to tell whether you're talking financial or, so that needs to be improved.
Yeah,
It needs to be really clear what period we're talking about.
Yes, so we'll work with the report writers
You
to
don't
make
have to
sure
work
that
with
that's
anyone,
clarity.
just make sure it happens.
Yeah, make sure it's happening.
That's a simple one.
Just to be really clear, this is a report on your 10-year plan indicators, so it follows your 10-year plan year.
What?
So it's on your 10-year plan indicators.
Yep.
So it follows your 10-year plan year, which runs from July to June.
Yep, okay, so it should have that on there, shouldn't it?
We can put
Should
that-
have those,
we can
this
put
is
that on
as at
Yep.
a certain period of time. Yep. Thank you. You done, Leo? Thank you. Just a couple. Just on the Vision Zero thing, so we're running in a situation now where we have targets for this and then this thing called Vision Zero, which doesn't link into anything. Is that right? Because clearly Vision Zero, which is just our target in here, should be zero.
So the Vision Zero is a council vision that's been through council. This measure is through the DI, Department of Internal Affairs, in terms of a compulsory measure that we need to monitor, and that has been taken through the 10-year plan. So it's around that, having the target measure through the 10-year plan so that we can actually have some data versus the vision that we are aiming towards. So yes, there will be, it seems.
So until you have data, so it'll change your behaviour. So if our target at one thing is the DIA targets, and then there's a Vision Zero target.
So the Vision Zero, is my understanding, is the aspirational aim for this council.
So we don't do anything different in order to achieve the Vision Zero target than we would have to achieve the DIA targets.
So basically, we have an aspiration, zero road deaths, right? And we're on a...
Aspirations are supposed to cause you to do something.
Yeah, and in doing so, but the problem is it's not going to be overnight. There are a number of things we have to do to achieve that, whether it's education, whether it's capital intervention and so forth. The DIA measure and our target for the DIA measure reflects the steps we're taking over time to achieve the Vision Zero outcomes. So that's for this year, and next year will be lower, and next year will be lower again, and so on. And with a goal that by a certain point of time, with these measures and with the Vision Zero aspiration, there's a degree of capital intervention that's required as part of the 10-year plan. We debated how much money we wanted to spend on safety improvements of roads, and we increased it as a way to accelerate our achievement of the Vision Zero outcomes, but we don't put zero now because we know we can't do it yet because there's interventions next year and the year after and year after. So this is a stepped approach towards that outcome.
Okay, thank you. On page 37, you've got a target there of no more than 5 complaints per 1,000 connections, and then you report against the target with a percentage. That's like saying we're going to get 3 apples, but we got 4 bananas.
Just to clarify, the 1.44 is, and you'll see the percentage is a little bit funny looking. It's because if you look at the percentage figure, it's actually got a little second zero under it. That means it's so it's 1.44 per 1,000. So it's actually called a per millage.
So the percentage...
It's a per millage. It's called a per millage. So that little symbol indicates it's not a percentage.
I thought that was a percentage followed by
it's a per millage.
a
we will make that clearer in our
well, can you just say, thus far we have got 3 complaints per 1,000?
We can do that.
Yeah. Or because, and that's 2 or 3 times that appears in this report.
Yes,
that
it does.
kind of report. Yeah. So what is it?
It's called a per millage.
Department of Fantasy Words again? When was the last time that was ever used? That language?
We have used it in our 10-year plan.
Pillage. Yeah. Yeah, that'll be in there. Okay, thank you. On page 42, we talked about flooding events. Have we identified the rationale for those? I know there was a big storm in the period, sort of 100-year type thing. But do we go from that and say, okay, this has happened, this is what we can do to stop it next time? What do we do with it?
So just to clarify, in terms of the measure, it's around the number of times the stormwater.
Yep.
Yes, so we do look at after when a particular event occurs, which, and to understand the cause of that and to put measures in place to prevent that from happening, particularly when it impacts our community.
Okay, so can you remember what the causes were that were identified for that? Was it simply the very extraordinary dumping of rain all at once, or should we be able to deal with that?
That was a significantly intense rainfall in a short amount of
remember
time that basically overwhelmed the stormwater system because it's not designed to capture that amount of water.
So there were no issues in our stormwater. So if that happened again, if that level of rain came back, the same thing would happen. And I'm not trying to catch you out. I'm just saying there wasn't a blockage in there that aggravated it.
Yes, so in terms of those high intensity rainfall events, yes.
That will happen again.
Possibly. Could.
Well, if the cause was that amount of rain coming all at once, which was it was a hideous event. I can remember it, but I'm just trying to say, so our stormwater is not configured to deal with that.
It's not
that sort of thing.
configured.
Okay.
It's not configured to deal with those large rain events.
Okay. So the obvious question, I guess, is should it be? And the answer can be no, because it's might be going to cost billions of dollars, and the whole city go bankrupt. The answer is no. Okay. Thank you. Page 37. Page 28. No, page 37. What's waste diverted from landfill at our solid waste facilities? I thought our solid waste facilities is what the rubbish guys pick up off the footpath, and what's solid waste?
Solid waste is the rubbish and recycling that's collected from our curbside, from our residents.
Okay.
And so that's the diversion of what we've recycled that hasn't ended up in a landfill system.
Okay. So so this is the guys sorting the plastics and all that sort of carrying?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all. Thank you very much. Okay. No one else wants to speak? A question? We will be in a second. I'll move that we receive the report. The seconder, Mallet Southgate, and we're in debate. If you wish to say something.
Just a very super speedy comment, actually, just in respect to that debate about our system being able to cope with extreme weather. And as you know, I attend the Policy Advisory Group in Wellington, and this is a topic of focus around climate change and the potential for huge costs on infrastructure of all councils. One blessing is we're not a coastal area, so we don't have that problem compounded by sea level rise. But what we will see, and we are seeing, is more extreme weather events, whether that is high rainfall over in a cyclonic kind of way, and drought. So I'm not trying to be alarmist. I just think it's my responsibility as the person who attends those meetings to alert you to the fact that we're having very close conversations with government and local government and others, insurance industry and so on, about the future costs of dealing with climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. It's always, I'm a bit of a research junkie, so I'm always kind of critical of these things. But I appreciate that you are trying to measure the community outcomes, and to me that's our highest level of what we're trying to achieve. That's our vision, if you like. I was interested to see the results of this, and that where we, and as a rule, where we are either lagging or we don't have data is in the perceptual stuff. Whereas with the numbers, it's easy to quantify. You can tick off, are we getting enough people doing what we set out to do and are our targets right? So it shows me that it seems to be a battle around perception. What worries me is that our comms department can quite easily manage perception, and that, to me, invalidates it a little bit. So I'd prefer to see it separated out to a qualitative versus a quantitative type survey. But, I mean, you are given what you're given. But I would like some sort of recognition being given to the fact that Where we are lagging is with regards perception. City safety is a prime example. We don't ask how many people have been mugged, absconded, robbed in the street, but we ask how they feel about city safety. And to me, it's always just a little bit grey and almost, dare I say it, a wee bit fluffy. Regards the Vision Zero stuff, your point's well made, Gary. I think with regards to Vision Zero, I worry about using the term aspirational because it means sometime in the future. To me, I'm calling on DIA straight away to recalibrate the questions against Vision Zero because most of the councils now are adopting Vision Zero, and we've got to be serious about this. We've got to. You're right. We've got to put our big councillor undies on and say we are failing if people die. You know, we've got to fail. We are failing if someone's injured, and I don't mind if it comes up as a big fat red that we are failing because it holds us accountable to provide a safe and decent infrastructure for our residents to at least not injure themselves when other idiots drive. Thank you to the clarinetist downstairs as well for about most of those questions. I thought it was Leo's stomach. So, did you hear that downstairs?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, that's by the by. So, thank you.
Okay. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Does anyone else want to speak? All right, we'll move. We'll put the motion that the report be received. Those in favour, those against, unanimous. Thank you very much. Shall we have a smoko now? Back at 10 past. A video guy's thumb goes up.